Formula One fans. It's your GridRival team here to discuss strategy for the Bahrain Grand Prix. And Michael and I are live at the Long Beach Grand Prix in California with what feels like poor internet for service. So, in the event that you lose us, you will have Ryan and William with you. But before we get into it, some quick introductions for those that are here maybe for the first time. My name is Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of GridRival. Today I have Michael Ursinoli to my actual right this time, who's our CTO. We got Ryan Booth, our Director of Business Operations, and William Laddie, our Principal Software Engineer. Reminder before we get started to like and subscribe to the channel so you're not relying on push notifications to find out about when these things come. We noticed that some of you have done that. There's early questions. People got here 5 minutes early today to start getting their questions in because this chat has become busier and busier. And if you want to make sure that you get our feedback on whatever your lineup question is, you got to get them in early. So start getting them in if you have them. Let's see. Quick recap of Japan. We had 10 drivers go up in value and 10 go down in value. None stayed flat. Kind of rare that things are that even. Look to my right. It's weird. This is the first time we've ever done this show together, so I don't know how to deal with it. We had Isaac Hadjar up 2 million. Now, if you've been watching this show, that is a prediction that we've gotten right. Every now and then we do get something right. Hadjar has last two races been up, I think, full 2 million in value.
And Ross is chopping up, so I'll continue this description here of our results. Oliver Behrman up 1.3 million, Max up a million with his victory at Suzuka. A number of other drivers up lesser amounts. On the downside, the big losers Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll, who both had a poor showing in Japan. Liam Lawson also, not quite up to speed with the Racing Bull yet. Constructor-wise, no huge gainers. Racing Bulls up 1.3 was our biggest winner. Aston down 2.3 million. Aston really struggled with Suzuka. We'll see if they can turn it around this week. So that's where we're at as far as biggest winners and losers. Ryan, what do you think as far as what do we think is expected? What do we think was a surprise? What do we think might be a one-off among those bigger those winners and losers?
I mean, I think we did talk about how it might have been time to jump off the stroller coaster at the peak, and we were right about that. He had a horrible weekend in Japan. Hard to do worse than P20. Obviously, one of the biggest losers in our game. Aston Martin, one of the biggest losers. So I think we nailed that. And then winners. I mean, Hadjar looked great. He looked good in the free practice sessions here in Bahrain too. And I mean, I don't know if you can call Max or like what a weekend for Max. That qualifying drive was just incredible. And then, you can't pass anyone at Suzuka, so he's able to hold on the entire time.
Yeah,
I will say,
I saw an interesting stat out of Suzuka. So the top 6 qualifiers finished in that order, and that only happened something like 4 other times in the history of the championship, and 2 of those were Monaco, to nobody's surprise at all.
not shocking. But yeah, I think there was one position change in the entire top 10. We really didn't see much on track, and that's another thing, like leading me to another loser. It's hard to call somebody a loser with P2, P3, but I know that's probably been talked about to death, but McLaren not using any sort of strategic advantage of having those 2 cars up there to try and catch Max. You're not going to overtake him on track. I feel like that was fairly obvious. You can't count on him making a mistake. Max is nails. And they just ran the same pit strategy for both cars. And like, I don't understand what the point was there. You might as well take a chance. You're not going to lose P2 and P3.
Yeah, if you wanted to prioritize winning, you had to split the strategy. Are they afraid of prioritizing one driver over the other? Piastri looked a little bit faster. They weren't willing to do any kind of a swap, though. I wonder if
I
there's
don't.
politics at play.
Yeah, I mean, even at the end of last year, or closer to the end of last year, when it was really obvious that Lando was the only guy. He probably was never going to, but Lando was the only person with a chance to catch Max in the driver championship, and they still couldn't figure out to prioritize Lando until it was way too late. So I don't know. Maybe they're still trying to figure that part out. I guess it's a good problem to have. You have 2 great drivers, and you're going to win the constructor championship, and having to figure out how to prioritize the driver championship is definitely a good problem to have, but I think they're still trying to get it figured out there.
Yeah, so we sold high on Stroll, and we were right to sell high on Stroll. Do we think Aston's going to turn it around this week? First and second practice didn't look all that encouraging.
I wouldn't count on it. And especially at the prices they're at, if you're looking at really cheap drivers, like if Alonso is really cheap, then like maybe he's worth a shot. I still think he's a little overpriced. Stroll, he just, I know he's cheap, but he looks so bad that I just can't, I can't wrap my head around that, especially when you look at, where are we here?
Alonso was 15th in second practice. Drugovich ran the first session in his car, so only one session for Alonso. I have to figure wherever Alonso is, that's the theoretical ceiling of the Aston. And the ceiling's not looking all that high at Bahrain, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as a constructor, they're still at just a shade under 15 million. That's the last constructor I would run. I would run all 9 other ones at price over Aston Martin.
So I think we've already answered the question of what constructor is overpriced. Do we think there's any drivers that are overpriced Alonso aside?
No one really jumps out. I guess you could argue. Lawson looks bad. I was completely wrong about Lawson last week. I thought he was going to have a nice bounce back, and in the new car, really wasn't there. Again, he might still have some value at 11.2. I'm off him. I think in terms of a really overpriced driver, there's not really anyone jumping out at me. I think we're at fair value for a lot of these guys.
There's one driver to me, and he's right at the top of the talent tier, Yuki Tsunoda. Not looking that good in practice today. I really think a lot of us owe Checo an apology. This car sucks. Max is doing everything he can to drag it up the grid, and we saw the shock qualifying lap last week. Only 7th in second practice today. I just don't think the Red Bull's that fast, and I don't think I'm touching Tsunoda.
No, I agree. There are a lot better options in the talent tier, and they're a lot cheaper too. So I'm sure we'll get to talent driver at some point, but yeah, I would not be touching Tsunoda either.
Yeah. So let's talk about the bargains. Like, who might be a bargain?
I think it's still Hadjar. He went up the full 2, and I think there's still room to grow there. I think we talked about long-term contracts last week. I put him on for 5. He's already gained 2. I expect him to keep accumulating some value here. He probably doesn't settle in until maybe the 13-14 range. Maybe that's even low, but I think for sure he's still underpriced.
Hadjar's going to be fighting for championship points every week. He's going to be fighting for a top 10 finish every week, I think. So I think there is a lot of room to grow with Hadjar. He might even be best of the rest, or maybe second best of the rest, if we put aside Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull. Like, Hadjar is right there in the discussion. So yeah, I think he's still underpriced, and I think he'll be beating his teammate consistently, so even more points. We talked about how Lawson struggled. That said, Lawson didn't have winter testing in the Racing Bull car, so last weekend was his first weekend in the new car. Maybe with a little bit more time, he'll be a bit closer to Hadjar. But Hadjar's looking like the real deal. In the talent tier, he seems cheapest to me. I think if we look above the talent tier, I think Kimi Antonelli might be a bargain this week. Mercedes looking good in practice. Antonelli settling into F1 very well. And yeah, I want to see more. Only got one practice session in because of a technical issue this morning, but fifth fastest in second practice.
Yeah, who would you rather have? They're about the same price, Antonelli or Hamilton.
I like the Mercedes better. I'm going to go Antonelli.
I agree. And then I think the last driver, this guy's kind of a wild card. I don't really know if he's undervalued. He is if this is for real, but Oliver Behrman, he was very strong in Japan. He's looked good in the practice, or the one practice session he ran. He didn't run FP1. I'm still not sold on Haas as a team, as a manufacturer, but or as a constructor. But I don't really know what to think about Behrman. I would never sign Ocon. It's Behrman or nothing on that team. But it'll be interesting to see how he kind of shakes things out here.
Yeah, I didn't see enough practice data to know if Behrman was like the one guy of the two who did a quali run or something like that. Like, it is quite the gap between him and Ocon in the practice results this morning. We'll see. Maybe Haas is figuring it out. Australia didn't look so great, but maybe they've resolved some issues and they're going to be a bit more competitive going forward. I certainly don't hate Behrman as a choice. A lot of discussion about who's your talent driver. And Hadjar, we've talked about a lot. Uh, Ryan just brought up Behrman as a potential choice. Like, he was top 10 in practice, and there might be room to grow there. I saw somebody in the chat ask Albon or Hadjar as far as talent driver. That's a great question.
I do like Albon. I would choose Hadjar though, just because he is significantly cheaper. Hadjar's price is at a point where I feel like you almost have to roster him. I know he'll probably have an extremely high league adoption rate, so that is the downside. So I can see maybe going contrarian on a talent driver selection, but I think he's a guy that should fit into most lineups because in that salary range, I mean, who's projected to beat him? I think it's him.
If I'm carrying both drivers on my roster, I'm probably leaning Hadjar just because he is consistently better than his teammate. Theoretically, Sainz is going to catch up to Albon at some point, I would imagine. Um, if I can only choose between rostering one driver or the other at all, I'm going Hadjar. Same reason you said. Hadjar has room to grow. Albon is near the ceiling as far as where he can get with the Williams, and he's also approaching the ceiling for talent driver eligibility. Hadjar still has plenty of runway there, so I think Hadjar has more upside value wise. But if you want to roster them both, great. I think it's going to be hard to go wrong by making either of them your talent driver. I think we're leading Hadjar, and that was Katie asking that question. Thanks for the question. Yeah. Anything else you want to bring up before we get to the Q&A?
Anyone you're looking to pay drop fees for, or anyone who you would recommend paying drop fees for?
If I'm somehow carrying anything Aston, I'm totally over Aston.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's nobody that I really dislike right now. Like maybe Hamilton, if you tell me that you want to take Leclerc or Antonelli, like it could be worth dropping Hamilton. Anybody above him is worth carrying because they're all potential podium finishers. Maybe Max. If FP3 isn't looking good for Max, then we sell high on Max. If he's currently the most expensive driver in our game, and if he has a bad day, it's going to be really bad value wise and point wise.
Yeah.
So
if FP3 looks anything like FP2, it's hard to say cut Max at that high penalty
it's a
fee.
big drop fee.
But I would definitely say if he's not on your team, don't sign him. Go with one of McLaren's for cheaper.
Like it's kind of a catch-22 though. So if the drop fee for Max is almost 900K, it's 3% of his current value, which is almost 30 million, so almost 900K. But if Max ends up 7th, he's going to lose that anyway.
That's true.
All right. So I see a bunch of questions pouring in. Get them in there in the chat. We'll get through as many of them as we can. We also have a Discord you can join if you want to further discuss after the show. We're in there sometimes. There's the paddock on your GridRival app in certain parts of the world. And let's start at the top. Brian just complimenting the analysis. Thanks. Glad to do it. Bexonius, I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry if I butcher any of your names. Lineup is Leclerc, Albon, talent driver, Gasly, Lawson, Ferrari needs a driver, 12.5 million. Can't have Sainz. Hadjar's your first pick. I love Hadjar.
I think Hadjar is kind of the easy one here. Just do it. I have no bad things to say about him.
Yeah, considering dropping Lawson or Gasly, it depends. Like I don't quite know off the top of my head how those numbers work out. Gasly didn't look great in practice. Like if you told me you wanted to drop Gasly for Like that's the problem, actually. Who do I take below Gasly? You can't take Signs. Like you're kind of stuck with Gasly. It feels like maybe you just take a flyer on Bortoleto, who was not last in either practice session, and if Bortoleto could be not last, he's going to gain you some value, which could
Yeah,
just mean keep the car in one piece.
yeah, and I think too, he's looking like, I guess, dropping a driver and Ferrari to upgrade to a lower constructor and better driver. I don't hate that. I think Ferrari's fine where they're at. I don't think they're a bargain at all this week, especially they haven't looked that great. So I could see, depending on how the money works out for you, if you drop Lawson or Gasly and drop Ferrari, sign a McLaren guy, and then maybe one of the cheaper constructors, depending on how that works out. I don't have the math in front of me, but
I think Racing Bulls is where I go if I'm dropping Ferrari. If
yeah.
we're going to go for a discount, I think that there's room to grow with Racing Bulls. They might be the fifth or sixth fastest team anyway, which is what you're hoping for if you're dropping Ferrari. And then I can't do the math in my head right now to figure out what that affords you. Like if you can end up with Antonelli, like even if you have to run Bortoleto, like maybe you drop Gasly and Ferrari, you end up with Racing Bulls, Bortoleto, Antonelli. If that fits, I don't know. That's probably not a bad situation for you.
Yeah, I think when in terms of constructors, I'm not really looking at Ferrari. Definitely not looking at Red Bull. If you're going to go with one of the top tier guys, it's either spend the money for McLaren, which I don't necessarily think is the best idea, but Mercedes is probably the only one over 20 million that I would even consider rostering this weekend.
Yeah, they can get you some more value if it is points that you want. Hard to go wrong with McLaren. They podium every race, and like they'll fairly consistently give you points, but hard to gain any sort of value, which is something that we still want, especially early in the season. We want to be able to give ourselves the flexibility later down the line to really stockpile. Next question is Laszlo, 92.4 million. You've got Racing Bulls and 5 drivers.
So just a full lineup.
A full lineup. I don't know who's locked out is the problem. Like anything we give you, like at least one of them is going to be locked out.
Maybe we come back to that one. That's going to
Yeah.
be that's a deep dive right there.
The clean slate. Rick wondering what will Ocon do in Bahrain? If practice is an indication, not very much. What do you think? Do we think there's more to offer from Ocon?
I think potentially, but it's I'm not willing to find that out by investing in him. I think if he was
bad Japan.
Yeah, if he was, I think if he drops another 2 million after maybe a bad race this weekend, you start to kind of look at him, especially if Behrman is still strong and you kind of have some trust in that car. But at this point, like there are guys who are cheaper that I feel are going to run better. So like I have no desire whatsoever to have Ocon on my team at this point.
Yeah, me neither. Waltron 3000 would love to hear rookie thoughts and outlooks. If we're talking about the rookies that are on the grid now, and I think we're very bullish on Isaac Hadjar. I think we're pretty bullish on Kimi Antonelli. Like if he had a faster car, he'd be podiuming. He'd be in contention for wins, I think. Yeah, as far as those rookies, great. Behrman looking okay. Doesn't quite have the equipment like those other guys have, but Behrman I think has a future in the sport. Gabriel Bortoleto, he's not last and he's in a Sauber. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I've been impressed with kind of what he's done in all the practice sessions. He does a couple. He got out of Q3 once or twice.
Yeah, he hasn't made
good
huge
for him.
mistakes. Jack Doohan, I think we're on the Colapinto countdown clock for him.
Yeah,
I think they're just looking for an excuse, honestly. And have we forgotten anybody? We have a lot of rookies this year. I think we got them all.
Yeah, I think
I'm not really counting Lawson as a rookie. Like he had a bunch of starts prior to this year, and we saw him struggle with the Red Bull. Hopefully, he finds his feet in the Racing Bulls car. Like he's shown enough talent that, like, I don't think that what we saw last week is representative. But yeah, so that's where we think about the rookies. The young drivers that we saw this morning in practice, I don't know a ton about them. I know Iwasa has been in the Red Bull system for a while, and he's made some appearances before. Uh, the other guys I don't know quite as well, but we'll see. Um, Jordan with a lineup question. Norris for 3, Piastri 1, Lawson 1, Hatchar 2, Stroll 2, 17.6 million locked out of Williams. Do you hang on to Stroll or ditch? Thinking about Racing Bulls for constructor. I like Racing Bulls. I hate Stroll. What do you think?
I think the problem is I don't know where he goes cutting
Yeah.
Stroll. I mean, I guess you can just try and play Doohan or Bortoletto and hope that they finish okay and gain some value. I think they're probably better placed than Stroll just because Stroll looks it looks bad. It was a nice little start to the season, but he's a guy, and it's especially too that the drop fee is not that punitive that he's down at 8.2 million. I think if you can get Racing Bulls, and then I would assume with ever money in your bank, you can't, or you already have Hajar.
So
I think you might be better off with doing a Bortoletto just from a value play. I don't. They might not score more points, but they have a better chance, I think, of going up in value than Stroll does.
And they might outfinish Stroll anyway. Stroll finished last week, and he was almost last in practice today. 17.6. If you take Racing Bulls, that leaves you with 5.6. You drop Stroll, that gets you to about 12.9, I think. And then 12.9, you have some options. You have your 5 drivers. Like if you have that kind of money, like you could even consider Signs. Signs is not a bad choice. Or you could sit on the money for a week, take Bortoletto. There's a decent chance that you gain some value out of Bortoletto. And you have some contracts rolling off, so we don't have to worry about not being able to make a team next week for Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Anytime that you're going to sign somebody like a Doohan or a Bortoletto, you've got to be careful about the contract lengths and when your contracts expire, because it could be that you take Bortoletto for a race and then he loses value, and then you don't have enough money. You have to drop somebody to make a full lineup next week, and that would be unfortunate.
Yep. Always have someone rolling off at the same time as your cheapest driver.
Jeanette with a question. Leclerc, Sainz, Lawson, Hajar, Williams locked out of Piastri. Driver for 26.3 million budget. Hey, you got
Is this as easy as Russell?
Budget. George Russell? Yeah, George Russell's a solid choice. I like Russell there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the clear winner. I think he's going to be better than the Ferraris. Yeah, with that much money left over, I think that's the clear play here.
Yeah, Michael's only here for the Doohan chat. Yeah, I think we gave our Doohan take.
Yeah, we can sum up Doohan in about 5 seconds. He's bad. That's all I need.
Yeah, he has not been good so far, and I think Briatore is itching to get his guy Franco Colapinto in that car. How many more crashes before that happens? And Doohan apparently intentionally left the DRS open in Japan because it worked in the sim. That's why he had that huge crash.
Yeah. I loved his interview after they asked him about it. He's like, I'd prefer just to not talk about it. And
do you blame whatever developer wrote the sim to where the DRS works? Like maybe I hate to throw my fellow software engineers under the bus here, but just saying, maybe there's a bug.
I mean, yeah, maybe, but I think I still blame the driver who tried to keep DRS open when no other driver would ever do that.
Yeah, that was definitely a decision. Oscar wondering, drop Signs for Hajar. You could make that argument.
I would.
Like Hajar's been better than Signs. Like I would do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's worth the drop fee because it's going to be, and especially too, like if you can get Hajar longer contract, I think he has so much more room to grow than Signs does. I'm not really low on Signs. I wouldn't be dropping Signs just to drop him, but if you're dropping him for Hajar, that's something I can get behind. But if you already have Signs and Hajar on your team, I think Signs is perfectly reasonable to have on there.
And he'll catch up at some point. Behrman, Stroll, or Hulkenberg asks KLS. Behrman, Stroll, or Hulkenberg? Definitely not Stroll.
It's got to be
Probably not,
Behrman.
it's got to be Behrman. I mean, Hulkenberg drives a Sauber,
Yeah,
and Behrman drives a Haas.
the only knock on Behrman out of these three is just if you can't afford him, because he's significantly more expensive. But if you can afford all three, it's Behrman by a big margin.
Yeah, Behrman, then Hulkenberg, then Bortoleto, then Dewin, then Stroll.
Yeah, then 50 feet of crap, then Stroll.
Yeah, yeah, we could stick a few more people in front of Stroll probably. Uh, do we think Hadjar's peaked? Should we sell him? Only has Piastri and Hadjar signed. Ask Gustavo. Uh, I think that we've concluded so far today that Hadjar has not peaked. Hadjar probably has room to grow.
Yep, that'll apply. If there are any more Hadjar questions, like that's our answer to
Yeah,
pretty
we
much
like
all of it.
Hadjar.
We like him a lot, and we like him as talent driver. We like him for long-term contracts. We like him every which way.
Yeah, Hadjar seems like a good kid. So only has Piastri and Hadjar signs. Well, those are good drivers to have signs. Yeah, so I don't know if you want lineup advice or what the rest of your team situation is, but Piastri and Hadjar are pretty good drivers if you're going to have two drivers.
I think those are when you consider price, those are probably the two guys I want the most. I think Piastri has the best value of all the blue chip drivers. He's cheaper than Lando. He can beat Lando. I still think if you had to tell me who's going to win, I'd pick Lando over Piastri. But like at price, it's him, and then down low, it's got to be Hadjar where he's at right now, and talent driver eligible.
Yeah. All right. People liking the videos, press that like button if you're enjoying this. Just let YouTube know that you enjoy this. Tell your friends, and we can make some more friends in chat here. GPS wondering about Gasly and Behrman and Alonso. So we talked about Behrman. Gasly, Alpine's not looking so great.
No, I expected more out of Gasly last week and in the practice session today. I know FP1. I'm throwing everything from FP1 out the window. I know he was whatever second or whatever the hell he was, but I'm throwing everything from FP1 because you've got 6 regular drivers who didn't even participate, and they're running it in the heat, and the conditions are going to be completely different than qualifying in the race. You saw a huge difference just between FP1 and FP2. I would look at FP2. I would throw everything from FP1 out the window. Don't even bother looking at those results.
FP2 is usually the most representative session for that reason because the weather's usually the same unless there's some change in weather during the weekends, which I don't think there's supposed to be in Bahrain. I mean, they wouldn't even be running much of FP1 if they weren't literally given a set of tires that you can only use in the first half of FP1. Like they actually had to do that because it was a ghost town during the first part of FP1 before that.
and I think FP3 will be kind of take it with a grain of salt as well. I think that'll be less indicative than most other FP3 sessions.
Yeah, when you go from day to night, that's a massive difference.
It's almost like why bother even having it?
Yeah. Well, we got to get the TV windows in there. TV rules everything.
That's true.
What's the take on Alonso? Alonso's a capable driver, but his car's not very good, is our impression. At least it's my impression.
Yeah, there are guys in our game cheaper who I'd much rather have than Alonso. He's just kind of untouchable. He gets into the conversation if we see Aston Martin upgrades or if he has maybe 2 more bad races and you're looking at Alonso in the $12 million range, then things change. But at this point, I don't even think he's worth a conversation. He's like the last driver I'd have. I would rather have Stroll than Alonso for half the price, and I would not want Stroll. So that says everything.
Yeah. But let's just hope that Alonso's steering wheel stays on the rest of the weekends.
Yeah.
Apparently that was an issue in FP2, and luckily that didn't cause anything nasty. Owen with a great question for those newer players out there going to be curious about this too. Lando back in Australia, the first race of the year, took pole, won the race, lost a little bit of money. Why is that? Great question. So in our game, the value changes are not based on race finish position. They are based on fantasy points. And winning from pole does not necessarily give you the most fantasy points. If you go into your league, you press that gear button and tap on the league rules, the scoring rules. You can see the full breakdown on how we award fantasy points and how we compute these value changes. We don't just make them up. There is a formula based on fantasy points and your position relative to your current value. So there are personal improvement points where you outperform your improvement index, as we call it, which will become your 8-race average finish in the early part of the year. We have an initial ranking, and so we get those first 8 races worth of data. So if you outperform that, like if you're Isaac Hadjar and you were ranked like 17th or something and you're finishing 10th, you get a bunch of improvement points. If you beat your teammate by a lot, you get a lot of points for beating your teammate. Like, let's say you're the one driver who brings the car home in one piece, you're going to probably score a lot of teammate points. So there was that opportunity for some of the mid packers to outscore the guy who won from pole. Like, for example, I think Alex Albon that week scored the most fantasy points, if I remember correctly, because Sainz crashed, and I think Albon scored points that week. He had a really good day, and he scored more points than Lando, and so Lando lost a little value. And so that's the long and short of it. It's based on fantasy points. Winning from pole does not always get you the most fantasy points.
Does get you a lot though, so it's never a bad thing.
It gets you a lot, yeah. And he remains stable. It's not like he lost 2 million. Like you shouldn't see something that wacky happen. Graffitas 13 desperately needs our help. They are dead last in their friends league. Let's try and get you out of the basement. Russell, Bortoletto, Sainz, Ferrari, Albon, and Gasly locked down 33.9 million for 2 spots. Let's help Graffitas out here. So I see room for Isaac Hadjar, who we are madly in love with this week.
And that leaves him enough Kimi or Hamilton of...
Yeah, Kimi Antonelli or Lewis Hamilton, take your pick. You could consider dropping Ferrari and going even higher as far as driver, like grab a McLaren guy. If Ferrari might lose value this week anyway.
If you can make it work, I think you drop Ferrari for a cheaper constructor. I know we're beating it to death, but it's Racing Bulls is probably the best option. But even if you want to go way down and pick like Sauber,
take Sauber and then like run front running drivers. Like you could have Lando or Piastri or somebody who could win the race.
Yeah, if that move can get you a McLaren, I think that is the that's where you should go with that one.
Yeah, Antonelli's not a bad choice either, though. I think let me find his improvement index. I don't have that in the notes, but we do have it in the app, and I still have to set my lineup.
Yeah, so, I haven't quite finalized mine yet either, but
yeah, Antonelli's improvement index is 7. So if he can outperform 7th place, there'll be some improvement points there. Gonna have a hard time beating Russell though.
Yeah, agreed. The coaster is dipping. Yes, Michael Toaster Boy. We have covered that, but the coaster is dipping is probably, that's like saying we had a slight dip in the market last week. We are in free fall with the stroller coaster.
Yeah, we're not Aston Martin fans this week, based on last week, based on practice. Like I'm not touching Alonso or Stroll, and let's see. We do give specific advice as time permits. The more you tell us about your team, the better, just so we can give you useful advice instead of just tell you guys that you have locked out. Do we think Alpine will finally show up in the points? Like if we mean the championship points, probably not this week.
No, and I think the question isn't necessarily Alpine, it's Gasly, because I think Gasly is the only one with a chance. I can see him putting together a race where, they nail strategy, he's okay, and they finish P10. But I think that's even very hopeful. I wouldn't bank on that, but I think that's the only way they run themselves into points, get a little bit lucky, and I think Gasly is the only guy with a chance to do that.
Yeah, and they'll probably need somebody to have a problem.
Yes,
and
they will need
they'll
that.
also need to make sure that the car is sufficiently heavy, which is something that they struggled with a few weeks ago. Okay, another lineup question, this time from Zachary. 42.6 to spend, needs two drivers, has Piastri, Hadjar, Doohan, Ferrari, no Norris, no signs available.
A lot of
Okay.
Ferraris. I guess that's people bought low after all the disqualifications, but a lot of people got Ferrari on the team still. I think Ferrari is a candidate to drop, as we've said for some of the other lineups. I think Racing Bulls is better to run it at half the price, or I guess a little more than half the price, just so you can spend more on drivers. But if we're just going to go with this 42.6, let's see. What do you have?
That gets interesting. So
He has Piastri,
42.6 doesn't quite get you two blue chips.
No.
Like it could get you Albon and your choice of Leclerc and anybody below Leclerc.
25. I mean, Russell Behrman, that's an option, right? Wait.
Russell and Behrman, that works as well. Yeah.
If you want to, did he have Lawson? I mean, Lawson's an interesting guy this week because I think everyone is so low on him. Like, he should be better. I thought he was going to score points last week. I guess I'm hoping that instead of just being completely wrong, I was just a week too early. I'm not willing to count Lawson out yet. But if you already have, it's definitely Hadjar over Lawson. But if you already have Hadjar, like Lawson's not a horrible signing. I don't think his salary has too much more to fall. Like I think he should be finishing in that P10, P11, P12 range. He should be contending for points every week. I don't know if he'll get them, but he should be at least in the mix.
Yeah, he is currently ranked 15th in fantasy points. If we talk about who his car is faster than, he's faster than both Saubers. He's faster than both Alpines. We have him that already has him at 16th. Aston, now you're 14th. It's like he should be higher than he is. And
faster than Haas.
Compete with Haas. He can compete with Haas. He should be faster than Haas given Hadjar's pace. Like it should be Racing Bulls versus Williams in the mid pack fighting for points every week. And maybe Lawson needs one more week to catch up. At least that's my take on it. But I could see him being more competitive. Like let's let him get back to Europe and get in the sim as well. Like they throw him in right at the beginning of a triple header. So there's hardly time to catch your breath, especially when you're going from Japan to the Middle East for the first leg of that. That's quite the hike for those guys. I can't imagine actually working in the industry to where you have to be at the track every week.
Yeah, it's one thing to just be awake in the middle of the night, but having to actually do all that.
Yeah, I once flew to Tokyo for work and was expected to function the next day. And that was rough. That was really rough. Let me tell you. Like I don't know how these guys do it. And my props to them, like all the hardworking people in the racing industry. So anyway, on to Declan's random videos. Piastri and Sainz for one more race. Hadjar and Ferrari for two more. 33-2 in the bank. No Leclerc, no Hulk. And we need how many drivers? We need two drivers.
Two drivers for 33.
That's it. This is an interesting spot.
I think with Hadjar, that solves your talent driver problem. So it kind of makes me want to go with an expensive driver and a really cheap one.
Yeah, probably a min-max situation. Like if we take Bortoleto, that leaves us at 28-1 by my math.
Yeah.
And 28-1 gets you have Piastri already. Like you can take Russell or Hamilton or Antonelli, whoever you like among those three. I think we're liking Russell the best out of those three.
Yeah. And again, another option to potentially drop Ferrari to give yourself some more money on drivers, but personal preference. I would do that, but I can definitely see the opposite side of like I want to keep Ferrari and just sign some cheaper drivers.
Yeah, and given who he already has, I'm like there's nobody that we're going to be able to afford that I'm really dying to sign, like in the talent tier. Like, given that we've already got Hajar, we've already got Sainz, great choices, by the way. And the other thing you could do if we're dropping Ferrari, we could go like Antonelli, Albon. But like, I'm not really dying to do that. I'd rather do like Russell, Bortoletto,
I would too.
and Bortoletto could get you some money anyway, just by not being last and maybe benefiting from other struggles. Uh, Mike pointing out Yuki struggling in both practices. Yeah, we touched on that early in the show, and you left that comment early in the show too. Uh, the Red Bull's not very good. Like that's
No.
that's my take.
It's not. I mean, you look at it, if Max doesn't pull out that qualifying lap, like one of the best qualifying laps we've seen in a long time, we're sitting here talking about how Red Bull is dead.
Yeah, we're talking about a McLaren 1-2, and McLaren is set to take another constructors championship, and Red Bull. But these problems date back a bit. Like, they've been operating essentially as a one-car team for a while.
Yeah.
And then Adrian Newey left last year, one of the greatest engineers of all time in the sport. He left. The car's not going to get any better without him.
No.
Yeah, it's like that's an understated loss, and that'll be Aston Martin's gain as the 2026 rules come in. Like, I think that they take a step forward next year. I wonder if Aston ends up just punting on this year and focusing their budget on developing the 26 car.
They probably should.
That worked. Like, if you ever saw the film Braun, like that was like what Honda did in 2008, and then they ended up selling the team to Ross Braun, and they won the championship. But yeah, they just spent their efforts on the '09 rules. They said forget '08, and they came out of the gate with the fastest car, and they won the championship. So there is merit to that strategy. I think at least one mid-packer to back marker is going to try something like that this year.
Yeah, they might as well tank. They've got Stroll's money, so who cares if you lose a little prize money, and then what you get more allotted wind tunnel time the worse you finish. So just pull the plug on this season and get ready for next year.
Trust the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, I'm Jen7169 says Piastri 1, Antonelli 4, Albon 3, Williams 4. Needs 2 drivers with 22.3. Thinking about the next 2 weeks. So you're thinking about Bahrain and you're thinking about Saudi Arabia. I want to think about a third week too. The race after that is going to be Miami, which is going to be a sprint. And remember, only drivers score sprint points. Constructors don't score sprint points in our game. So you may want to bias slightly towards drivers that week. But if we're thinking about the next 2 weeks and we have 22.3 to deal with, if we're not cutting anybody and we keep beating on Hajar, like Hajar and then whoever you like from Lawson downward, which might be Lawson, might be like it's either Lawson or Bortoletto.
I think it's probably a Larson Hajar, the V-carb stack.
Lawson Hajar, yeah. I keep wanting to say Kyle Larson for some reason. I look at the name and I want to say Larson. My brain's on NASCAR mode. We have a NASCAR game too. Check that out if you haven't already.
We'll get to see a lot of Kyle Larson this weekend if the rain holds off. We'll get to see him three straight days.
Yeah, excited about that. And yeah, anyway, back to F1. As fun as NASCAR is. Michael said it was Landy's race, maybe Lando's race. The I and the O are next to each other on the keyboard.
I think it is. I think it's Lando's race until we see otherwise. Like, I mean, Max just pulled that qualifying. I couldn't believe that. But here at a place where you can overtake, even if Max somehow lands it on pole, which I don't expect at all, I expect Lando to pass him at some point, assuming he qualifies where he should.
If Lando doesn't win, it's because Piastri out-qualified him.
Yep, the only person who can really beat Lando, I think, is his teammate, or if Clarence screws up strategy, which we know is possible.
Like a safety car at the absolute worst possible time.
Yeah.
Or like a red flag somehow. Yeah. I really hate that you can change tires for free on a red flag in F1. I wish they would change that in American series, for those who are not familiar, like generally you're not allowed to service the car at all under a red flag. F1, you can do whatever you want scot-free. Like you don't even have to go to the back or anything. It's a little bit game breaking. Yeah, Biscuit. I think this is a McLaren take. Yeah, Piastri doesn't miss sector 1 on qualifying. Yeah, if Piastri has a clean qualifying, he can contend for pole. Good strategy last week. I do think that they should have split the strategy. Like your 4 was probably second and third. If you can get first and third, that's really big point wise. But then you might also be showing favoritism to a driver, and maybe there's some friction that you don't want this early in the season.
Yeah.
Jordan, part of the merch gang. When are we getting some merch? I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Hopefully soon. You can, when Ross and Michael are back next week, you can bug them.
Would be nice. Why did my scroll just do that? Okay, Alex Scott, next question. Current team is Norris, Sainz, Hulkenberg, Bortoleto, no Williams, 21 in the bank. Haas for the next constructor, or swap for a better team. And if you can afford Haas, you can afford Racing Bulls. I'd rather have Racing Bulls.
Yeah,
and we don't even have to swap.
And you got money left over for potential driver upgrades somewhere.
I don't want Hulkenberg and Bortoleto.
No, I don't think I want both of them. Like Hulkenberg's probably the guy to get rid of because he has a little less of a chance, I would say, of gaining value than Bortoleto does just because of their current price and their finishing positions. But yeah, I would look at maybe dumping one of them and see where you can get after that. You've got a fair amount of money left over if you do Racing Bulls with 21 million, so that'll leave you with some options.
Yeah. So 21 that would leave you with 9 million, I think. And if you dump Hulkenberg, 9 and 8 is what, 17. Then you have your pick of the talent drivers, like grab a Williams driver.
Yeah,
is what I would. Well, you have Sainz already. I don't know if you can swing Albon. If you can't swing Albon, like Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah, we might need to start rapid firing some of these.
Yeah, we're starting to get down on time.
Just enjoying it so much. Like time flies.
It does fly. Max Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, Stroll, Aston with 5.3 million to spare.
Drop Stroll, drop Aston.
Get rid of your Astons. Consider getting rid of Gasly. Definitely get rid of your Astons. Don't touch Aston Martin this week. Is Leclerc still a value play with Miami coming up? Depends on the pace that Ferrari shows in the next week or two. It seems like Mercedes might be catching up to them. They might have already caught them. But like there's still some potential for Leclerc. Like he could still podium most weeks. Yep. Let's see. How's this track play out for speed versus handling? Feels like horsepower is the way that like it seems like it's not a coincidence that all the Mercedes powered cars are the fast ones this week. Bargain on Bortoleto, yeah, he's a bargain. Antonelli's deep value, yep. Haas Racing Bulls. We talked about talent driver. Would you take Antonelli over Leclerc? That's an interesting choice. I think if I'm prioritizing value gain, I like Antonelli. If I'm prioritizing points, I like Leclerc. What do you think, Brian?
I agree. I mean, I think Leclerc will finish ahead of Antonelli, but I think Antonelli has more room to grow in terms of value. I think Leclerc is probably about where they're going to be. Hamilton probably can still grow for the Ferrari, but I think Ferrari is kind of, until we see maybe upgrades or something different, I'm not really loving where Ferrari's at. But like Leclerc is a very solid driver, and he will put up solid points pretty much week in and week out.
Yeah. Some strategic questions more than lineup questions down the chat. Sorry if we can't get to all your questions. We'll come back to lineups if we have more time. Strategy question for the midfield guys. What would be the harm in only doing one race contracts between the middle eight guys and rotate them race to race? Asked Daniel. So I'm sure you're aware of the lockout rule. If you drop a driver, you can't sign them back the same week. If somebody's contract expires, they have to sit out a race before you can sign them again. If we're going to start cycling people, you're going to end up eating a lot of variance as far as if somebody has a bad day, you're going to lose that money in your bank. Whereas longer contracts give you a more stable value, like a more representative value change of their pace. Like you could still be wrong and lose some value, but it's not going to be based on, well, my guy got run into in the first turn and I'm down 2 million now. That's the risk there. I do like the idea of being able to, make a change every week somewhere in your lineup to pick up on whatever bargain might be. Might be at the front. Like we saw Ferrari become a bargain because they both got caught cheating and they lost 2 million.
Yeah,
You never know.
I tend to sign longer contracts with the cheaper guys because if I have a choice between being locked out of someone who I think is going to be good or having to pay a pretty cheap drop fee, I'd rather just pay the cheap drop fee and go wherever I'd like to versus being like, oh wow, like Hadjar looked so good in practice and like now I can't sign him. I'm locked out. So
DJ wondering if you're building a team value budget, are there downsides to picking top tier and talent drivers based on highest combination of average points and value index, especially when their salaries decreasing? If their salaries looking set to decrease, then you'll have a hard time building value. Like if you're looking to buy low, if that's what you mean, then buying low is a great idea.
And when you talk about points and value, I know talent driver was mentioned in there. Sorry, I lost that part of the chat. When I pick my talent driver, it's like value is a bonus, but I'm looking for points out of talent driver, and I'll try and find value elsewhere in the lineup with either the cheap guys or someone who I think maybe lost 2 million the week before. But like points are very important in this game still, and talent driver is the best way to get those. So I throw value almost out the window and just like I want the guy who's going to score the most points. And if he happens to be underpriced, then that's just a great little bonus.
Yeah, good day usually does correlate with an increase in value. All right, so let's see. Anything?
Someone's
Any
sad
thoughts?
Mike is gone. Yeah, we wish Mike and Ross were here as well, but their internet stinks. They're out having fun in California.
They don't have internet in California. It's a shame.
Nope.
All the tech there, they don't have internet. The entire internet's in California, except that part of California, apparently. Bill wondering, any thoughts about adding a driver to short like a stock, not the season, but an agrees. That's an interesting idea. Like, can we like anti-sweat a driver? We've got a suggestion board. Like, I think it's linked from our Discord, and feel free to throw that suggestion there. I don't know what the time horizon would be to introduce a game mechanic like that, but
that'd be fun. Like the inverse driver spot on your line. You have a talent driver and then the inverse driver.
Then we finally have a reason to take Aston. Yeah. So, all right. That is an interesting suggestion. Dave says night races always watch FP2. They're the most representative. Definitely. We talked about that a bit earlier. Should you let Stroll go for the drop fee? Probably. Stroll's not looking too good. Who gets fined the most by the FIA for cursing this year? Is it going to be Max? Probably.
Yeah, because his car's not even good. He's mad when his car is good. He's winning by 20 seconds, like in those dominant years, and still saying all sorts of words he shouldn't be saying. So
he's going to be swearing like a rally driver. And those guys are up in arms because, like, one of them did get fines for swearing. This isn't just an F1 thing. The FIA is doing this in all their championships.
God.
Let's see. Would you drop Hamilton for Antonelli? That's an interesting question.
I don't think I'd drop him for Antonelli. Yeah. If it's a clean slate and I can pick one, I think we've talked about Antonelli probably has a little more value there, but I wouldn't drop Hamilton unless something really wacky happens in FP3 because I don't know, maybe he crashes. But I don't think he's worth paying a drop fee for. I think if you've got Hamilton, you might as well just kind of keep him.
Yeah, if you have Hamilton, hold him. If you get to choose, Antonelli might be better. Jay thinking Bortoletto might lose money if he finishes lower than 17th, still risky. That would be 17th in fantasy points. And there is very much the possibility he does better than 17th in fantasy points if he qualifies like not last. Like if he can get out of Q1, which is a thing that we've seen happen. If they can run ahead of some people on race day, if you get some retirements, then like Bortoletto could potentially gain some value. Yeah, losing value is still a possibility if they're just last, but that seems less likely than last year.
Yeah, and even if he is last, like it's not, you're not losing 2 million. You know, he's going to drop a bit.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a bunch of lineup questions. Like, are we being too punitive towards Lance? Strategy killed him last week looking for a yellow flag. 2 bad sessions. But, we were bearish on Stroll though even before the race.
Yeah, and Stroll he's a guy that does not get benefit of the doubt, and I think rightfully so.
We have a lot of data on Lance Stroll at this point.
Yeah, there are certain drivers where they could finish P20, and I would come back the very next week and be like, hey, the strategy didn't go their way. They're better than this. They're on sale now. Lance Stroll isn't one of those guys. He just isn't. I don't think there's much else to say about Lance Stroll.
Apologies to Canada. Like, we know what Lance Stroll is at this point. He's been in the sport a long time now. Yeah. So, any other questions we want to jump on before the end here? What about Doohan at 7.2 million? We didn't talk a lot about Doohan. Finished second, 12th, and 14th the last 2 weeks in fantasy points. Yeah, Doohan 14th fastest in practice, and Alpine's not the slowest car.
No, I just think that when you're down at that cheap of a driver, I would rather just have Bortoletto for $2 million cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Doohan can easily beat him. He probably should finish ahead of him, but
on pace,
when it just comes,
but Doohan has made some mistakes this year. Is the issue? We've seen him make some mistakes, and I do think that Doohan will beat Lance Stroll.
I do too, and he should. I think everyone will beat Lance Stroll. And okay, Mike, I see you in the chat. It's not like Bortoletto is Logan Sargent level bad. I don't even want to dignify that with a response, but Logan Sargent is much better than Bortoletto.
Nestor wondering Tsunoda as talent driver. I'm going to say no. Tsunoda's result last week was not good, and FP2 was quite bad this week. I'm just not in on Tsunoda right now. Like, I just don't think the Red Bull car is very good. I think Max is that good. I don't think the car is that good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't even think Max is a guy you want on your team at the value he's at right now at that price. I mean, couple
There's
bad
a good
races.
Chance he loses value this week.
Yeah, he's a guy to kind of revisit maybe next week. But here, not so much.
Yeah, Max is probably going to be a buy the dip situation at Saudi Arabia, or maybe even Miami. Like, maybe we wait until Miami, depending on how practice looks next week. Hadjar Bearman signs as talent driver of Hadjar. Would he drop Max for Norris? So, we brought this up earlier in the show too. That this is an interesting spot, because Max might lose the 900K drop fee anyway. If 7th is what he really is this week.
I think you do. The only edge Max has over Norris is you're going to get. There's a better chance at more teammate points.
You're probably going to get a lot of teammate points.
Yes, I think that is the only downside. Is that Norris has a very capable teammate, and Max. I mean, Tsunoda might be capable, but he's not capable in that car potentially. It is pretty early still, so like we could be completely wrong on Tsunoda. Maybe he does look good, or he might just need some time to a couple more sessions in that car to get his feet under him. But yeah, right now Tsunoda not someone I'm looking at, but potentially we'll see how things go over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think we are just about at the top of the hour now.
Yes, I know we didn't get to a fair amount of questions. Sorry about that. I think things get thrown off when 2 people drop off 5 minutes into the show. So we tried our best, but we do
I-
appreciate all the questions.
I think we got through a good bunch of them. And if your question wasn't answered somewhere in the conversation, again, we've got that Discord. Check that out. We've got a link to that in the app. Depending on where you are in the world, potentially the paddock is available in the app as well. And that's another place where there's a great community, happy to talk lineups, and we're in there sometimes as well. So definitely check that out. And big weekends of racing ahead between F1, NASCAR, and IndyCar. Hope you all enjoy it. There's just so much. I'm going to be on a couch watching racing.
Tune
it's
into
great.
everything. MotoGP, the Formula E's in
Formula E,
Miami. Just
everything. There's just so much racing, and it's at reasonable hours. So definitely check that out. And on that note, we'll say goodbye. Check us out again next week. We'll do a show ahead of Saudi Arabia, probably Friday, time TBD. And we'll see you all then. Thank you so much for watching. And I don't know how to end this.
I don't either.
I'm going to ping them. Maybe if we both press the leave button.
Are we still live on YouTube? Can we
Probably
keep talking? Yeah. Hi,
we
everybody.
can keep talking.
This is what happens when someone starts the show and has to leave the show.
Yeah, and then their internet dies. Live internet. How do you all like this?
We might be here for the next couple hours, honestly.
Yeah.
We could just we can talk about anything we want. Yeah, hot mic. Mike says
Yeah,
hot mic.
Yeah,
so.
that's a hot mic. Yeah, so I've sent the note to the people with the controls, and
yeah, everyone's just saying you might still be hot on. We do know we're hot on YouTube.
Yeah.
We've got this.
Yeah. So first rule of broadcasting, first rule of politics: every microphone is live. Bortoletto and Signs can gain 2 million. If they, I don't know the numbers. They could gain 2 million with a good day. To answer GPS's question. Yeah. So Ross is gonna. Yeah, I don't have that button, Ross.
Yeah, so we might just be stuck here for a while if Ross can't get his internet back, and we may just be in YouTube prison for the next. We can just live show the entire weekend.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
24-hour stream. Everybody, if we're doing that, everybody's got to donate.
Yeah,
just turn your computer off. Okay, I don't know if that's necessarily the best advice.
Yeah, if we both press the leave button on our thing, I don't know if that ends the broadcast for lack of people, but we're going to keep filling time. They're working on it. They're working on pulling the plug, and
but yeah, we'll talk about dumb stuff for the next however many minutes. We don't know when it'll end. Eventually, we'll just be pulled off YouTube.
At the funniest possible moment.
Control Alt Delete. I mean, I do like that we have a lot of IT experts in the chat. No one has really helped us, but I do like the ideas.
Yeah, I've got the. It's funny. Like I'm the principal software engineer. I don't have that button though. I don't have all the buttons. Yeah,
it is a hostage video.
Yeah. So anyway, let's see.
Well, now we can talk. Now we can talk about Kyle Larson and NASCAR.
And we can talk.
Listening to us.
Talk about Kyle Larson and what an interesting season we're seeing from Joe Gibbs Racing is looking really good. Hendrick's looking really good. Like it's amazing. Like we had a jillion winners when they brought this new car in, and once again it devolves into Hendrick versus Gibbs and kind of Penske.
Actually, this is an awesome strategy because I think that the best way to get people to leave, the best way to get F1 people to leave a chat is to probably start talking about NASCAR. And be same vice versa. If we did a NASCAR show and we started talking F1, I think everyone would leave immediately. So this is probably the best way. Mike, I think, is stay until the end. Mike is a diehard fan. He's in the chat every week. Like he'll probably sit here for hours too.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bristol this weekend, short track. That's a lot of fun. Well, how many fights do we get? We get a good fight after the race.
I think we can get one.
Yeah, I wonder who it'll be. Like, who's got a really short fuse these days?
I don't know.
Does Larson sit there 100 laps down and wreck the field again and ruin the finish of the race?
God, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Why
they ruined
did they nerf the damaged vehicle policy anyway? Who wants to see somebody 100 laps down?
That ruined what was one of the stage 1 and 2 at Darlington were not great to watch. Stage 3 was awesome, and then it just got ruined by Kyle Larson. And
yeah. And when are we gonna realize that maybe these stage breaks kind of break things in terms of dictating the strategy? I mean, it's not like TV never takes a commercial during green anyway.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We got it. We got to cool it with the commercial breaks, and it's all the same commercials. Half of them are Viagra, half of them are Peyronie's disease, and then
like the rest of them are sports books.
Yeah, it's like I'm sitting there thinking that I've got maybe different medical problems now after watching the same commercials over and over again, and then it's like, here's a sports book to lose money on. Yeah, it's like WebMD but on a broadcast.
Anyway.